I'll start with a prayer. Anoch tawinan. Nanas kumtinanas kam imiugisagag noh tawinan. Mantu kagwitimtin tasawimia. Taktimaginawaya. Tapisi tuskawaya nas kagisagag. Kagwitimtin noh tawinan. Apiyah tak tapik squata magahkirgawega wipik squata manas kagisagag. Sino wagitsi. Egon zawasem sinana gwistuato nigit. At nigan. Yawa maginto tamat noh tawi. Kia esutte pihtsigi noh tawina. Kiega kirgawega at pihtamen. Me wenen te pihtinan. Kia tihtamane teispayo nos kagisagag. So I'll just interpret. I said, Creator, I ask for his blessing today to look after us as individuals so that we can meet together in good faith and with respect. And I ask him to listen to our discussion for our people and for our children. And I also ask him to acknowledge us today and that we have a good meeting. Hi. I just want to say that, historically, when we set up the Association of Métis and Non-Status Indians of Saskatchewan, and way back in the 1970s, we set it up to have a collective voice as Indigenous people in the province of Saskatchewan. A collective voice of the Métis, non-status, and the Inuit in this province. That was key in the 70s. We wanted to use our strength of the peoples, Indigenous people, in numbers. We also wanted to meet as equals, as Métis and non-status, and off-reserve Indigenous people, to work together and to respect each other. That was our main objective way back in 1970. We also were given the opportunity to discuss land, a land base for the Association of Métis and Non-Status Indians of Saskatchewan. One of the land bases we discussed at the time was the Primrose Lake Air Weapon Range. We started to do research in the 1970s on the people, Indigenous people that were impacted by the displacement of our people from the Primrose Lake Air Weapon Range. My family was displaced in 1952 from Primrose Lake. In fact, I attended Alacross boarding school and flew in from Primrose Lake to Alacross to attend grade 1. When I came back that summer, my family was displaced. The only compensation they gave to my dad at the time was they moved him over to Cold Lake, Alberta, to work on the air base for the Air Force. That was his compensation. Other land that we dealt with was the Métis farms in the 70s and in 1987. Métis farms such as the Green Lake Métis Farm, Isla Cross. There was even one in La Loche in the 1970s. And then we had one in La Brette. And of course, our people lived in road allowances at the time. So some of our people were displaced from some of their original communities. For example, Crescent Lake in Yorkton. The Métis people were taken out of that community, and most of them ended up in Yorkton. So I will stop there if there's any discussion. If anybody has anything to add to what I just said. I'd ask Robert, for example, to respond because his family, the Cummings and the Mackays, were one of the families displaced from Primrose Lake Air Weapon Range, and the Cummings and the Mackays were never compensated.
Hello.
Yep.
Am I up? Wow. Good afternoon to everybody. Lanate, Tansei. I want to thank everybody for participating in this great presentation by Allan, because he really actually, maybe just to take a step back, I want to thank the moderator, Charlene, and Allan for this presentation. I want to thank you for the prayer, Allan, and I want to thank the creator for allowing us to all be here together. And I just want to recognize my wife, Betty. She kind of gave me the cat eye when I left, but that's politics, man. So anyways, yeah, what Allan has described is exactly right. AMNSIS was the forerunner of the modern day Métis Nation, Saskatchewan, and it really was an organization that solidified the resolve of First Nations and I would say Métis and non-status people to deal with their issues. And just to give you a couple examples, personal examples of how AMNSIS helped me or dealt with our issues. Allan is right. The Mackay family lived in the northeast section of the Primrose Lake bombing range, and they lived on the McCusker River. And when they closed the bombing range to our people, everybody was moved off. Some had to go to Buffalo Narrows, some to La Loche, some to Isle of Cross, Bovell, some went to Canoe Lake. And my family never received any compensation. And the other thing I would add to that is that Allan is right. AMNSIS was really doing a lot of research on land-based issues. For example, they were doing research on script and stuff like that, and that's where a lot of us actually learned a lot about our families. Like my mushroom, Celestine Mackay, Ambrose and Rosa Mackay, my aunties. They took Métis scripts in 1906 in Isle of Cross, and their mother, Angela Marie Riviere, took treaty. But from that time, the governments have taken a position that because Celestine Mackay took that Métis script, we've extinguished our Aboriginal title. And I want to say that all due respect to my mushroom, he never extinguished my title. There is a vacuum there. There is an unfinished business that needs to be dealt with respect to the generations that have come after those original script bearers. And besides that, our family never actually did receive any benefit from the script. We found out that to get your script, you had to put it on surveyed land, and there was no surveyed land in northern Saskatchewan in 1906. And there was no way that my mushroom or my chop-on was going to leave northern Saskatchewan. He was a hunter trapper and a fisherman. He wasn't a farmer. So we found out that some non-Indigenous farmer actually had taken that Métis script and applied it to land in Saskatchewan down in the southwest corner by Swift Current. They somehow got a hold of that Métis script and used it to get 240 acres of land. So we're doing other research on that right now. One other thing I would say directly, how AMNSIS really helped Indigenous people was in the 1975, and this is when the 60 scoop really hit home for me, because social services. I was a 60 scoop kid, and I grew up in the Doucette family, and in 1974-75, social services thought it was a good idea to split that family and take the three La Liberty kids that had grown up in that Doucette family for 8 years. They were from Green Lake, and send them to a professor, a non-Indigenous family in Michigan, Ann Arbor, Michigan. And I remember in July of 1975, Allan Morin and all the leaders of AMNSIS came to PA, and there was a great big rally in PA. And if you can imagine this, in PA in 1975, there was 300 people in the John M. Culliner Library protesting over sending these kids to the United States. I want to thank Allan. I never forgot that, brother. You know how you and Roddy DeRocher, Rose Boyer, and others, Jim Sinclair, Wayne McKenzie, Murray Hamilton, all of those people were there, just to name a few names. So there were more. Nate Henderson was there. And you stuck up for us. And so anyways, from the lobbying of AMNSIS, they subsequently brought the kids back. They never gave them back to the Doucettes. They put them in a border official's home in Estevan, Saskatchewan. And those kids really suffered. But from the lobbying of AMNSIS, the provincial government put a moratorium on the movement of Indigenous kids south of the border. They stopped it. They subsequently had two I forget what the word's called, two inquiries into what was going on. And actually, they went through 3 social services ministers that year, in 1 year. Can you imagine? In a government that goes through 3 ministers in 1 ministry in 1 year, there must have been a lot of things going on there. So, you know, I have very fond memories of AMNSIS. And as a matter of fact, in 1988, one of the AMNSIS, well, to me it's funny. Maybe you won't think it's funny. But I went to one of my first AMNSIS meetings in 1988, and I was just full of piss and vinegar. And I got up to the mic, and Jim Sinclair was the president, and I started waxing eloquence and telling him I didn't like what he was doing, and I was going to have his job one day. I was going to be president of AMNSIS, and I guess Jim and them actually pulled my Auntie Julia Pitzel aside. Why did you bring that character to the meeting? and then he actually, afterwards, he came up to me and shook my hand, and he hugged me and he says, "Beware what you wish for, Robert." So, you know, I've learned a great deal from, and AMNSIS has to take the credit for this. Most of the really good leaders that we have today that have come up and have learned through the Métis Society ranks have come from AMNSIS. And it's only from, and it really was an awesome organization. I remember when in 1993, when they went through this Métis Society, well, it was an AMNSIS sort of constitution. It took a lot of things out of that AMNSIS that Métis Society constitution. It really took a lot of the power of the people away. And that was the strength of AMNSIS. It was a really people-driven, people-oriented organization. And the modern day Métis Nation Saskatchewan isn't what's the word I'm looking for? A shadow of what it used to be. So I think I'll just leave it there. I've shared enough stories, but I'll let if anybody has any comments or questions for us with respect to. But I wanted to ask Allan one question though. Allan, in your presentation, you didn't mention the back in 87, 88, there was a court-ordered referendum on the splitting of AMNSIS, and there was actually a province-wide vote, I think.
Yeah, I'm going to get into that, Robert.
All right, okay, we'll just leave it there.
Yeah, but before I get into that, I just want to say that another thing that AMNSIS did, and I think it was really good, was to establish our election process, which is still being used to this day.
Yep.
One person, one vote. And that was started by AMNSIS. I want to also, when I was first elected in 1985, I was given the task to deal with this AMNSIS Declaration of Aboriginal Rights, 1985. It was a document that was established by AMNSIS. And I think it still can be applicable today. What we did at the time was held consultation throughout the province, and we met with approximately 80 communities or locals at the time. The Declaration on Aboriginal Rights 1985 dealt with economic development, housing, job creation, a land-based strategy, an urban strategy, and we also looked at the Back to Batoche site, and we started to develop a self-governing model. In order to do that, we developed a work plan on each strategy. Just to give you an example, let me give you an example on what we did in economic development, for example. We developed a goal. The goal was to develop economic development for the Association of Métis and Non-Status Indian people. That was our objective. First thing we did was we did a needs assessment of what are the needs of our people when it comes to economic development and how we can move forward to become self-sustaining, self-sufficient. We looked at a time frame of how we can move that agenda forward. How we did that is we began to put together a work group which consisted of Wayne McKenzie, took the lead, and I was part of that work group. And our work group, we decided to go to the United States to look at a model. We went to the city of Los Angeles, at a suburb called the City of Commerce, and we met with this organization called Telecu. It's still around to this day. Telecu is spelled T-E-L-A-C-U, if you want to look it up. And Telecu at the time received a grant from the United States government of $12 million. And they managed to make that $12 million grow by tenfold to $120 million. Now, how they did that, of course, is the city of Los Angeles, Telecu was able to draw from 12 million people. And that's how they did it. To this day, they have banks, they have their car dealers, they have real estate, and they have cultural activities and other activities that they develop out of their money. I'd be safe to say that they're probably close to $500 million to $1 billion as an organization today. And that organization was Latinos, people, half-breeds like us. So we took that model when we came back and we started to prepare an agreement. So with that agreement, we ended up with a grant of $9 million that we received from the Canadian government. And that's how we started SNETCO. Today, that $9 million is still in the bank, it's collecting interest, and we give loans only on the interest of the $9 million. And that's how we've managed to grow our organization. Of course, we've probably grown our 9 million by tenfold, but you gotta remember that we're only drawing from 1 million people in Saskatchewan in comparison to the city of Los Angeles, where they were drawing from 12 million people.
Yeah, it's the third biggest economy in the world. Yeah. One of them.
So to answer Robert's question, I'm just going to say this. When the reason AMNSIS disbanded in 1987 is after we returned from the First Ministers' Conference, the last First Ministers' Conference, the government of Saskatchewan cut off all our funding, our core funding. And the reason they cut off our core funding is because of a speech that Jim Sinclair made at the First Ministers' Conference. The night before he made the speech, Jim Sinclair met with the executive, myself, Wayne McKenzie, Jimmy DeRocher, and he told us what he was going to do. I'll just give you one excerpt of what he said. He said, "You, Premier Van der Zam from British Columbia, your family are immigrants to this country, and you came from Holland in Netherlands. I want to remind you as the Prime Minister that our Métis people and our First Nation people liberated your country in the Second World War. Yet, you don't give us the opportunity and accept the fact that you're not supporting us to move towards self-government. So it's a slap in the face for Métis people in this country. And you, Van der Zam, should have known better." Just to give you an example. I could give you more examples. So with a speech like that, they cut off our funding in Saskatchewan. As a result of the funding being cut off, and people seeing that there was some weakness in AMNSIS, they jumped all over it. They started a Métis-only organization. They took the advantage of AMNSIS when it was weak. However, what I want to say is, even though the resolution was 55 to 40 or 52 to 48, 52 for and 48 against, we still accepted the disbanding of AMNSIS. But before we did that, what Robert's question was, we went to court. And the reason we went to court was because some of our affiliates didn't want to go to Métis-only organization. They refused. So the Métis-only organization decided to take us to court because they wanted the court to make a decision in respect to a Métis-only organization, and that all the assets of AMNSIS would be transferred to the Métis-only organization. So that happened. In the 1987 AGM, it was Rod Bishop who made the motion for us to go around the province and to begin talking about how we transition from AMNSIS to Métis-only organization. And that's that. I don't know if that answers your question, Robert.
Yeah, no, it does, Allan, because I've seen the court documents. It was that were put on there that were advanced through the court system by Clifford LaRock and Morley Norton and others that ended up subsequently splitting the organization. So yeah, thank you for that explanation of that, because now you piqued my interest in trying to dig for some more documents to understand all of this, because really that whole thing destroyed a great organization. Really, it did destroy it. It destroyed that unity, and I don't really believe that unity has ever been picked up again. Just by what we see in the province of Saskatchewan right now, there's a lot of disunity, and I would say a lot of jockeying amongst people that want to be leaders and stuff like that. But it really was a good organization, and we had really good leadership. And if you ask me, I think a lot of it was just because they couldn't dislodge the other leadership, like Sinclair and you and others, Allan. They couldn't get rid of you guys, so they had to destroy the organization to get rid of you. But they never really ever did get rid of you, did they?
No, they didn't. We're still around to this date. And I just want to add that ever since the disbanding of AMNSIS, there's been nothing but infighting between the Métis National Council and the provincial organizations. That infighting is still on to this day. And that's sad. I think as AMNSIS, we were powerful, we were collective, and we worked together as people, and we had respect. That respect has slowly gone a different way.
I just want to interject for a second. For me, one of the biggest things, and what I guess is what keeps and what brought me to AMNSIS is I have said for many, many years that the government agenda is to divide and conquer. And as long as we are a bunch of splinter organizations and there's all the infighting, we won't progress anywhere, and we haven't. I remember going to AMNSIS meetings. I was just very young then. I was just a little kid.
Yeah, okay, whatever.
I remember going to AMNSIS meetings, and I was in my late teens, early 20s, and I remember going, and people wouldn't attack each other. They would discuss the issue and really heartily debate the issue. And I remember being in the tents, and people would be getting up, and it would sound like, oh my gosh, they're just at each other. But as soon as the meeting was over and you went outside the tent, they weren't angry at each other. They were, they'd be sitting outside at the picnic tables visiting with each other. But they debated the issues heartily, but not attacking each other so much. You always, so when I reflect back on AMNSIS and its strengths, I always see that AMNSIS was built on inclusion of the community, inclusion of the people, and hearing everybody out. And I think that is the sole basis for any really good organization, is that your people always have an opportunity to speak, to be included, and to participate. And I think that's, the biggest thing. And as a united organization representing Métis, non-status, off-reserve, and Inuit in Saskatchewan, all those communities are coming together. And now with the Daniels case, and we're all Section 35, it's going to be very easy to negotiate with the government in regards to that, because the issues will be very much the same. And there's so much that Indigenous people aren't able to access, in the urban centers.